Sarah was my big sister. People liked her. She had an outgoing personality. We didn't have a mother. We were raised by a grandmother. My mother died shortly after I was born, and Sarah kind of treated me as if she was my mom. She had a level of faith in me I didn't have in myself. After college, I spent a lot of time with her. Both her and Derek, I stayed with her a lot. I worked not far from where she lived. That's when I found out what happened to her. My brother called me and told me what happened, and I carried a burden for years because I felt like I should have been with her. It would have never happened if I was with her.
So in the spring of 1984, police were called to a home in the Hidden Valley neighborhood, to an apartment. And there they found Sarah Mobley Hall, who was 26 years old, and her 10-year-old son, Derek Mobley, had been killed in the apartment.
As a homicide detective in the 90s, we didn't have a cold case unit, a unit that was specific to dealing with cold cases. So as homicide detectives, what we did, we were able to either be assigned a case or pick up a case that might have some solvability factors when things were slowing down. As soon as I opened that case file and as soon as I started looking at the crime scene photos and reading some of the statements, it was something that really tugged at me, that told me that I need to solve this case. You see their images of them during happier times when they were, you got a single mom trying to do the right thing and raise her son, and just to know that they just seem so happy. And then when you look at the crime scene photos and you see the horrific case, it was probably one of the most difficult crime scene photos or crime scenes that I've had to see, just because I almost felt an attachment to both of them. And I felt as if they were family members of mine. So in the 80s, there was a lot of technology that did not exist, that does exist now, and even existed in the late 90s when I picked up this case. I was able to find the pillow that she was rested on. And so I immediately asked the lab to take a look at all of that evidence and see if there's anything that we could locate on there as far as a DNA perspective is concerned. And sure enough, they were able to identify DNA from the pillow that she was resting on, and they were able to develop a profile for that DNA. However, there was no one in the system at the time that we could match that DNA to. However, part of the investigation, along with myself and my homicide partner, now Sheriff Gary McFadden, and it just seemed that we came up dead end after dead end, and it was frustrating because both of us knew how much we needed to solve this case. The desire to solve it never went away.
It was sometime, I'd say 2021. It was the cold case homicide unit as well as the cold case rape unit. We're working in tandem on some of their cases to look at some possible DNA techniques that we could now use that are available to us as a laboratory and us as a police department. And so we started looking into the possibility of forensic genetic genealogy, as well as doing familial searches that are done in conjunction with the state laboratory. So we initially started doing our testing as forensic genetic genealogy, and when that didn't produce results that were able to generate any investigative information, we then explored the route of doing a familial search and working with the state laboratory. And when we did that, there was additional testing that had to be done in our laboratory, and there was additional testing that needed to be done in the state laboratory. And ultimately what happened was the state was able to conduct a familial search, and what a familial search does is to look for individuals that are in our state database that have potential biological relationships with the person who would be the perpetrator of our crime scene sample. And when that was done, we generated what is called a familial hit, and we were provided with the name of an individual that could potentially be a biological relative of the suspect that our cold case detectives were looking for. And when that information was provided to them, then they began their investigation and were able to identify a suspect in this particular case.
There's probably other cases like that, but just to hear the story about how they picked up this investigation and the speed bumps that they hit on the way, that they could have easily put this case aside and said, we can't do this right now, we'll do it later. The stars lined up, everything worked out, and it's just so exciting to hear that after all these years, we're able to bring some closure to this.
But I'm just so grateful that the police have found this person, and I hope he spends the rest of his days behind bars. I really just can't explain how relieved, it brought closure.
The main goal is that we have justice served, and our cold case unit assured that happened, and so I'll never lose sight of that. I should be retired somewhere getting a phone call that they solved this case, but I'm still working with CMPD, and we were able to bring closure to this case, and to be able to see that through as the chief of police is just amazing.